Good afternoon, everyone. Today, amongst us, we have Dr. Shekhar Sheshadri, the keynote speaker for Aham Youth Conclave, DPS Bangalore South 2020. Dr. Shekhar is a graduate from Maulana Azad Medical College, Delhi, and a postgraduate in psychiatry from National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, NIMHANS, Bangalore. He is currently the Senior Professor, Department of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and the Associate Dean of Behavioral Sciences, NIMHANS, Bangalore. Besides working with child and adolescent mental health, developmental disabilities, he is actively involved in the areas of gender, violence, trauma, and abuse of children in difficult circumstances, juvenile justice, experiential methodologies, school programs, teacher training in life skills, education, community, and school mental health programs. A very warm welcome to you, Dr. Sheshadri. I would now request you to please address the gathering. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dhanya. And I'm really looking forward to this session. I see that you've had a vibrant 2 days, and this is the concluding session. And I see that the numbers are increasing. We started with 90, and the participants are slowly growing, and I see 178 right now. So thank you very much for this privilege. Ahem as an initiative has, I think, come bang in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the new National Education Policy 2020. What does this have to do with the Delhi Public School family, of which all of you are members, and of which I would fondly like to believe that I have been co-opted as a member of the family? Friends, 100 years ago, there was the Spanish influenza. Not that one wants to speak about the dark aspects of that history, but upwards of 30 million people died. It's still being written about. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, COVID-19 is going to be written in the history of humanity for some very curious reasons, which I think I'd like to table before we really get into your lives, my friends, and the kind of experiences that you've been having, and the kind of challenges that you have been negotiating and navigating, hopefully successfully, hopefully with equanimity and resilience, and somehow growing. The virus that has caused COVID-19 is not even a living thing. It's a non-living strand of RNA. And if you look at what it has done in terms of bringing humanity down to its knees, and the kind of economic downside that's going to happen 1 year, 2 years down the line, the total weight of this virus put together that would have caused this devastation, when it started, was not even 10 or 15 grams. Now it would be about 40 or 50 grams. 40 or 50, or let's say max 100 grams of this non-living strand of RNA has created this kind of havoc in the world, of which history, all of us are part. Me sitting here and all of you out there, the Delhi Public School family, and all other schools and teachers and well-wishers and people who have gathered here today. What does this mean in our lives? And how have our lives changed? Have they changed for the better? Have they changed for the worse? Have they changed in interesting and curious ways? And how have all of us been negotiating and navigating these unusual times, unusual for all of us? None of us have faced this kind of a situation ever in our lives. In the next half an hour or so, and I really want to leave a lot of time for questions to be put on chat, with which Dhanya will curate, and I'll try to respond to as many of your thoughts and ideas that you share. Let's look at it from the first perspective. What did we lose as students? Was there loss of structure, loss of routine, loss of predictability, loss of learning spaces and opportunities, loss of social spaces, loss of peer interaction, loss of play? And when we get housebound and restricted in some ways because of the lockdown, and we are slowly coming out of it, what does it mean in terms of stress and mental health? Stress is not something that exists out there. Stress is an internal response to challenges that we face in life. And the funny thing is, if you really look at an expanded definition of stress, you don't get a good education, it's a stress. You have an education, you don't get a job, it's a stress. You get a job, you don't get a promotion, it's a stress. If you're heterosexual and you don't get married, it's a stress. You get married and you don't have children, it's a stress. You have a child, you're expecting a second child, that's a stress. So, stress is basically an attribution. It's the meaning, the making of meaning that we give to experiences that we face in life, and how affirmative that meaning is or not, as the case may be, and how equipped and capable and effective we feel in dealing with these kind of challenges. And if we don't, that becomes a stress. The kind of anxiety that many of us may be experiencing basically comes down to a very critical phenomena, and that's known as intolerance of uncertainty. Intolerance of uncertainty. If you ask any human being, how far in life have you planned, predicted, thought out? You may have someone who says, you know what, I've got things figured out for the next 5 years. I am going to finish my undergrad, and then my family has saved up, and I'm going to do my postgrad in USA or Australia. Someone will say, I have planned for 10 years. I'm finishing my doctorate. I already have the seed money to set up a startup. But if you ask this question to a stockbroker, he'll say 2 minutes, because a bad investment and my whole world will come crumbling down. The truth is, no matter how law abiding and traffic conscious you are, you're always subject to someone else's error of judgment. Does that mean that we live our life in anxiety and the uncertainty of not knowing what will happen, or do we embrace the moments that we have and work with the kind of creativity that our own equipment, our mind, our heart, and soul gives to us? And at this point of time, many questions came to me. All 200 of you now, the numbers have reached 200, and the kind of families that you come from. And I'm thinking to myself, what about the migrant workers and the daily wage workers who suffered loss of income? What's happening in their lives? What's happening in the lives of their children? its schools have been closed for such a long time, and with the remarkable kind of institution that the Delhi Public School and other schools who are represented here, and the kind of amenities and enablement that you provide for children to keep learning impact intact, to keep um, connections impact, relationships, communication. The unfortunate truth is that pandemics of the nature of COVID-19 have a disproportionate impact on the more vulnerable: migrant populations, daily wage workers, children with special needs, what's happening in their lives. I'm saying this to you, my friends, because while I would like to address your lives, and this is primary in what you've been doing for the last 2 days, I often ask myself, and I often ask people, two fundamental questions. I ask a teacher, and it's a trick question: do you teach because you love the subject, or do you teach because you love teaching? It's a trick question. The answer is, I teach because I love children. Love of teaching and love of the subject is important, but that's not the primary. But I equally ask a question: what is the purpose of education? Is it literacy, numeracy, being prepared to enter the job market? Or is the purpose of education the development of an egalitarian personhood, the development of a socially responsive and responsible citizenship, and the development of an identity that is imbued with aesthetic sensibility? I understand that many schools, many young people have appreciated the impact that the pandemic has had on other people, and do stuff like, food distribution and food availability. And this becomes very critical in the whole debate that we are having now, for all of you to think not just about the limitations that have been placed on your lives, and they are legitimate. You have every right to be preoccupied about them, and you have every right to anticipate assistance and transformation. But if that is nuanced with the kind of thoughtfulness and reflectiveness and empathy that you will have towards people who are in less fortunate circumstances, it creates in your identity that softness, जिसको हम नजाकत कहते हैं, वो सूक्ष्मता जो है कि the other, the invisible people that and in pockets in Bangalore, from where very many of you are, just to give you an example, I live in a place called JP Nagar, and it has one of Bangalore's best kept secrets, and that's known as the Ragi Gudda slum. You'll never even know it exists. Of course, now they've built resettlement, but it is so ingeniously covered that you don't even know that one of the biggest slums exists there. And everything that you would expect in an inner city ghetto, in terms of aggression and violence, and uh, domestic discord, and the predicament of children, everything goes on there, and no one knows that right bang in the middle of South Bangalore is this place. So I think that a knowledge of and a sensitivity to the other. And somebody once said that, India is almost going the Brazil way. There are two Indias. And do we have a sense of what these two Indias are? So that's at a social level, and I wanted to share that with you. Let's come to our homes and our lives and how you guys have been leading your lives since March when the lockdown started. What have I been doing? And you remember I spoke to you about children with special needs, or very young children. How are they dealing with? What sense are they making of this restriction when children need a sense of freedom? And one of the things that we've often said is, if children cannot go out into the world, how do you bring the world back into the family? And this is a theory of an Austrian philosopher called Rudolf Steiner. And this is that branch of philosophy that deals with the optimization of human potential, and it's called anthroposophy. And Steiner said that music, art, nature, creativity, movement is what really energizes and animates human being in their lives. Even for a small child, to give that child a small pot with a little mud and sand and throw a couple of mustard or coriander seeds, allow the child to nurture it, and it germinates in 3 days. And for a child to marvel at something that I have nurtured and is growing. It's about putting two chairs and throwing a bed sheet over it, putting a blue filter on the light, playing some Hawaiian music, making a jug of orange juice, and believing that you're in a Hawaiian beach. That it is the embracing of imagination that really takes us away uh, from the otherwise stressful processing of what we have been dealing with. All of you should know about the National Education Policy 2020. It's a very complex document to navigate, but it has made a very important point on well-being of students, well-being of children, and about flexibility in learning and teaching. It speaks about carrying credits and going forward. We don't know when the pandemic will end. It may take a year, it may take 2 years. The Honorable Prime Minister has already issued a statement about this group called NEGVAC, which is really looking at the whole vaccine business. And we believe that initially about 25 to 30 crore samples of the vaccine will come. And some of us wonder, what about the 100 crore other people of India? What's going to happen to them? So, the education policy really speaks about well-being and the embracing of student well-being and flexible systems of learning. And the Delhi public school family is sensitively aware and cognizant uh, of this challenge, and has been setting up systems for you, therefore, to continue to be in touch with each other, to be in touch with your teachers. That it reminds me of that story you guys might have heard about this during the lockdown and distancing, about this principal somewhere in Canada. I think he used to go on the bicycle house to house to stand at a distance and say, "Hi, how are you? Doing well, and everything good," and and then go on. It's because ultimately maintaining of relationships and maintaining of contact is the only thing that characterizes memories. And that brings me to core mental health issues. And the question I ask you, my friends, is what will you guys remember 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now about this pandemic and what's happening in your lives? What stories would you be telling your families of what you did? And my recommendation and suggestion to you is create memories for you to remember. There was a very famous ghazal singer called Jagjit Singh, and he used to sing these beautiful ghazals. And if you'll permit me, my dear friends, just to sing a few lines for you and tell you what the importance of this is from a mental health perspective. ये दौलत भी ले लो, ये शोहरत भी ले लो, भले छीन लो मुझसे मेरी जवानी, मगर मुझको लौटा दो बचपन का सावन, वो कागज की कश्ती, वो बारिश का पानी, वो कागज की कश्ती, वो बारिश का पानी. ये दौलत भी ले लो, ये शोहरत भी ले लो. टेक अवे माई वेल्थ, टेक अवे माई रेपुटेशन. भले छीन लो मुझसे मेरी जवानी. टेक अवे फ्रॉम मी माई यूथ, मगर मुझको लौटा दो वो बचपन का सावन. रिटर्न टू मी द स्प्रिंग ऑफ चाइल्डहुड, वो कागज की कश्ती, वो बारिश का पानी. द पेपर बोट दैट आई यूज्ड टू फ्लोट इन द puddles made of the rain water. Friends, you ask any 35, 40-year-old person, what do you remember about your childhood? You'll remember that which is a stable memory. And a memory is something that happened very often, or it happened once, but it was unforgettable because it was so joyous or so horrible. You know what I remember about my childhood? I remember that I had a 100-year-old antique bell in my family. And it was my job to ring it during mealtime, and the whole family would gather. There'd be laughter and talk. And now, at the age of 35, it has pride of place in my house. You know what I remember about my childhood? I remember that we had a family tradition that every week we'd go to the nearby orphanage and do some seva, some social work. और वहीं से मुझे प्रेरणा मिली. That's where I got my inspiration to do BSW, MSW, and here I am at age of 40 as the HRD manager of this company. You know what I remember about my childhood? I remember that dad used to work for the government, and every 3 years or 4 years, we used to take these leave travel concession (LTC), and the planning and the packing, and traveling to all four corners of India. That's what I remember. You know what I remember about my childhood? I remember every day thinking to myself, why the heck was I born in this family? You know what I remember about my childhood? I remember night after night putting my ear outside my parents' door to listen whether they were killing each other or not. Now, friends, all 226 of you who are here now, I appreciate and respect that many of you may come from situations where there are family issues and contentious issues that you face. My intention is not to open up any existing wounds. My intention is to table to you the importance and sensitivity of creating new memories going forward. You guys are the emerging citizens, of this country, and this is not the kind of just the kind of memories that you're going to create for your family 10 years from now, 20 years from now, but it's about the memories you'll create now to remember 20 years from now, to say that in this COVID time, in 2020, this is what you did and this is what affirmed your identity, made you feel in control, effective, resilient. And the biggest way that this can be done is to answer the question, what is the opposite of intolerance of uncertainty? When will the COVID end? You know, will I get it? Will my extended family get it? When will the vaccine come? They're saying vaccine will be for frontline workers and health professionals. When will we get it? Is there going to be maramari bhagadodi for the vaccine? But look at one of the things that COVID has taught us. Who would have thought कि भारतीयों को कतार में खड़े होने की समझ और तमीज है? That we'd actually be able to stand in a queue at the appropriate distance and do no pushing and shoving and trying to break the queue. We had it in us, and somewhere we lost that habit. But did it require for COVID, for us to regain that sense of civility and civic responsibility? That So the issue again is, what kind of memories are you going to create? And as I'm saying all this, I appreciate the affirmation that's coming from all of you, starting from people who have spoken about Steiner schools, and Ahan Parekh, who said wow, and Nandita, who said beautiful, and Aditya, who said beautiful, and Gayatri, who said wow, and Adit Bhatia, who said that deep, and Shadi, who said wonderful, and Akshita, who said amazing singing, and Mugdha, who said beautiful, and Zahida Khadir, who said beautiful words, and Akshita said amazing meaning, and Ujjwal Mulchandani, who said amazing song, and Shreya, um, who said beautiful, and Sanvi Dash, who said wow, and Sri Vishnu, who put three smileys, and Ananya, who said incredible, and Rekha Belwadi, who said well sung, sir, and Binita, who said wow, and Zahida, who came back to said very thought-provoking words, and Bhargavi, who sums it all by saying COVID has taught us to bring us back to old practices, to which Sanvi says COVID has taught us to respect our family. At this point of time, I'm putting on chat for you to have an idea of the kind of work that I do. At leisure, do have a look at this website. It's a public access free domain website because I don't believe in copyright, I believe in copyleft. You will see the kind of possibilities in mental health work, and you don't have to be a mental health professional to be a helpful person. I've also put down my YouTube resource. Please do subscribe to the YouTube and pass it on to all your networks. I have recently started a big national initiative and integrated resource for child protection, mental health, and psychosocial care under the Ministry of Women and Child Development, Government of India, through which we want to reach any child, every child in all the spaces she inhabits and occupies. Because the practice of child mental health is not sitting in the clinic and making a diagnosis. It has to, the landscape of the practice of child mental health and children's well-being, your well-being, is all the spaces, which means schools, childcare institutions, the street, families. So we will work with schools, with education boards, with teachers, with students. We will work with the judiciary, with legal services authorities, with district mental health program, tertiary care hospitals. We will work with child welfare committees, juvenile justice boards. We'll work with the police. We'll work with civil society, the media, to say the following. Mark Twain said, in the eternal laws of proportion, the loss of a doll for a child and the loss of a crown for an emperor are events of the same magnitude. Laws of proportion. Charles Dickens said in Great Expectations, there is no emotion in the world that's more powerful than the emotion of a child who has been treated unfairly. Emily Dickinson said, tell all the truth, but tell it slant. Success in circuit lies, too bright for our infirm delight. The truth's superb surprise as lightning to the children eased with explanation kind. The truth must dazzle gradually, else every man be blind. How do you work with children? And the sensitivity that is required. And what we've often found is that adults' relationship with children is unfortunately structured on the basis of a culture of instruction, expectation, control, and obedience, not on a culture of conversations. Social cohesion and conversations is important. So coming back, what is the opposite of intolerance of uncertainty? It is social cohesion. We live in a divisive society. We live in a society in which divisiveness, whether it's class-based or gender-based, and we need to build equity And let me tell you, when we put the question, what does equality mean? And people often say equality is about treating everyone the same. Equality is not about treating everyone the same. Equality is about recognizing differences. COVID will end, my friends, I assure you. But it'll take a year, 2 years. Sweden handled it differently. They were bindas doing stuff, but doing the SMS, which is sanitization, mask, and social distancing, they kind of reached herd immunity. New Zealand did it in a different way. Social cohesion, absolute responsibility. They were very strict about, and we will come out of the COVID. The point is not that we will not. The point is, with what frame of mind and frame of reference are we going to come out of this, and what are we going to learn and tell ourselves in the emerging selves that we are 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And this is the crux of contemporary psychology and mental health. Narrative therapy. All human beings are stories. You are a story, I am a story. Consciousness is nothing but a set of stories, childhood stories, adult stories, friendship, fights, loss, stealing guavas, grandmothers, illness, injection, oh my God, examinations, first relationship, first attraction, rejection, am I good enough? And through all these fragments, our sense of identity and personhood develops, which is either affirmed or not, as the case may be. And the idea is therefore to construct a personal narrative which, despite whatever predicament, challenge, difficulty, rough patches you may have gone through, that you construct an identity that is based on the principles of positive psychology, which is one of an identity which is integrated and an identity which has integrity. Some final thoughts before I take questions. What does integrity mean? If I ask you, between loyalty and fairness, which is a superior value? Between loyalty and fairness, which is a superior value? It's an interesting question. And the answer is fairness. What does this mean? I am, let's say, your friend. You hit a younger child. Loyalty means I will try to protect you. Fairness means I'll tell you, look, you'll always be my friend, but what you did was wrong. So, this is the framework, my friends, of what I wanted to share with you, to introduce you to the kind of work that I do, the kind of preoccupations that we have, the way that we wish to assist the community, take mental health into the communities, build a group of people, of the 241 of you who are present here. I'm sure many of you would want to get into social work, into psychology. Many of you may want to do medicine, get into mental health. But you don't have to do that to be a helper, because all it needs is reaching out and social cohesion. If you see someone in distress, your internal voice must not be, what does that have to do with me? Reach out and be helpful. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And I see that many people, in answer to the question, which is the superior value between loyalty and fairness, have quickly put fairness as this is a credit to the sagacity of the Delhi public school family, uh, that you recognize that fairness is indeed a superior value. That it was lovely to be with you, friends. I hope I did not ramble on too much. Most of what I say is not linear. If those of you who are students of physics perhaps know the difference between linear and non-linear, uh, but I guess through all this non-linear fragments, a sense of what identity and the notion of mental health and the kind of lives that you have been leading now and going forward, how you'll emerge from it with a robust identity is something that will strike you. I will stop at this stage again with a request for all of you to look at my material and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And just pass it on. You'll find a lot of stuff on many things that you'd need to know. I have stuff on adoption. I have stuff on parenting, a series called Parenting Pathshala. Uh, I have stuff on child abuse. Um, Please feel free to see it and gather as much of information from these. They're short videos at leisure. And Jai Hind, Jai DPS family, and thank you very much for inviting me. I'm open to taking questions now, which I hope that Dhanya Praveen will curate.
Uh, yes, thank you so much, Dr. Shishadri. We have a few questions that have come in. We have a question from Mugda. She says, how can we increase our learning capacity and concentration? Any tips on that?
Mugdal, let me predicate my response to something more fundamental than increasing learning capacity. I think how one increases learning capacity is predicated on how do we lead our lives and how do we work on time management on the one hand, and on the other hand, which is very structural, it's a day-to-day thing, and the on the other, a very ideological or philosophical, kind of issue, which is who am I and what do I want to be. So if one is very clear, and if you're not clear about who you are and what you want to be, that's okay. um, there's nothing terrible about that, because we are all works in progress. But if we have some clarity that this is the kind of person I want to be, and this is the kind of professional that I want to be, this is the kind of work I might like to do. It's a nascent or an amorphous kind of. And if you put that and time management together, and get a relationship going, then the learning capacity becomes better and better, because you have focus and you have direction and clarity. It's when these two are not there that learning capacity becomes a problem. Then, of course, there are core techniques of how one increases, learning capacity, and people have their own individual styles. And it's looking at what works for you rather than what works for the majority of people. And if you look at a very simple thing like, some people uh, highlight books, some people make notes, some people do group studies, some people listen to audio, some people do trial, kind of stuff, some people do mix and match. There are different ways that, but what's important is what works for you. So find something that works for you and consolidate that. You know what Sachin Tendulkar did, when he used to practice, just hang a ball and, keep on practicing, that. So essence is defined by activity. The essence of learning capacity is defined by the activity you bring into the learning capacity. So the limit of your capacity is the limit of your experience. So allow yourself to experience. Over to you, Dhanya.
Yeah, our second question, Dr. Shishadri. We have a question from Sanvi. She wants to know, how can we stay positive when we have all negative thoughts coming in? We have another question, related question. How do you stay positive and move forward, especially related to studies? How do you tackle the pressure related to studies?
Right. Now, negative thoughts do not emerge or emanate from a vacuum. There is context, there is experience, and then there's a negative thought. So a negative thought always emanates from an experience, and the experience is always embedded in a certain context. Now, what is that context? Is it a family context? Is it a school context? Is it a friendship context? And what is the experience? Is it rejection? Is it breakup? Is it criticality? Or is it a personal expectation, and how negative thoughts come? So, to begin with, they don't emanate from a vacuum. So, in order to address negative thoughts, it's important to really look at the experience that precedes and the context that precedes the experience of the negative thought and see what can be done about that so that this automatically comes down. That's the first point. The second issue is that the idea is not necessarily to fight negative thoughts. The idea is there is something known as process and there is something known as meta process. The negative thought is a process. The meta process is the meaning that you give to the negative thought. So this bad thing happened to me, this thing happened to me, and this nasty thing happened to me. Therefore, only nasty things will happen to me in my life is not a logical conclusion. So you don't add them up together to make a meaning that is larger than the sum of the parts put together. The third issue is how do you balance these negative thoughts with other aspects of your consciousness? Let me give you a simple example. The reduction of a child to a student is problematic because good student is equal to bad is good child and bad student is equal to a bad child. But a child is not equal to a student. A child is equal to son, daughter, grandson, granddaughter, brother, sister, niece, nephew, friend, Kannadiga, Bangalorean, Indian, vegetarian, music lover, nature lover, and student. So the negative thoughts are part of who you are. They are not all of who you are. You're much more than your negative thoughts. So if you balance that experience with other gifts and talents that you have, and that is why I noticed in chat that a lot of people put down mindfulness based practice. You know, so engaging with your creativity, diary writing, creative writing, yoga, music, some talent and gift that you have. Uh, uh, Perhaps many of you don't know, I'm a doctor by mistake. My basic interest is in music and theater. You know, I'm a trained musician. You know, as you can see, I sing, I play steel string, acoustic, electric, I sing for a band. You can check me out on YouTube. They are bootleg, of course. I don't want to be known. We don't play for money, but you can check me out. The band is called the Sarjapur Blues Band. I'll put it down on chat, but if you can remember, the Sarjapur Blues Band, and we basically sing, it's an working men's original backstreet eclectic rhythm and blues band. We sing only our own stuff. We write and compose our own music. That are there things that make me unhappy? Yes. Do I have negative thoughts sometimes? Yes. Am I an unhappy person? No. So that's what I would say, Sanvi. Over to you, Dhanya.
Yes, thank you, Doctor. Third question from Simar. How can we practice mindfulness during remote learning? Given the times that we are in now, we do have to pay a lot of attention, both while teaching as well as learning. So how can we teachers and students practice mindfulness?
See, mindfulness-based techniques, and these are called the third generation cognitive behavior therapy techniques. The issue about the practice of mindfulness has actually nothing to do with um, face-to-face, online, remote. Mindfulness-based practice, meditative practices are something that you essentially do uh, with yourself. And here, I want to share with you, my friends, a very, very significant difference. There is a difference between solitude and loneliness. Many artists, writers embrace solitude because, it's good for their creativity. So solitude and loneliness are very different phenomena. And just because we are in the lockdown, schools are closed, learning is going on remote, in the solitude of your house, there is no problem in practicing mindfulness-based techniques, which is, you do imagery, you focus on your emotions and your thoughts, you register them, you process them. You may want to, cap it up, by journal writing and diary writing. You may look at a new thing that I did today, a new thing that I learned today. You may look at maintaining from the tenets of positive psychology, a gratitude list. Because the truth, my friends, is existence is finite. We all got to go, but experience is infinite. In a given day, you can have a myriad amount of experiences if you allow yourself to, to explore and to experiment and to experience in a healthy way. So that would be my response, Dhanya. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Shishadri. Um, we have Shubh asking us, you know, if one feels demotivated all the time, how can one change that situation?
Uh-huh. That's an interesting question. I would go back to the same premise that I used for the negative thoughts, that why would an individual be demotivated most of the time or all the time? Again, going back to the laws of physics, one of the fundamental laws being, of course, the cause effect, that there has to be a basis or a cause for why an individual human being may feel demotivated most of the time or all the time. Is it because you have not had experiences of success? Is it because you have not been validated or affirmed? Is it because your effort is not recognized, but there is focus only on performance or outcome or result, achievement, success? Is it that the expectations that people have of you are far beyond, let's say, what your current capacities are? So there's always a reason. That I must share with you, I wrote a newspaper piece once. I said, rejoice, it's examination time. Funny, isn't it? No one ever thought of examinations as a joyous experience. There's always a sense of doom, disaster, and finality around it. Whereas examinations should actually be a celebration of learning. But it's never like that, because the emphasis is not on process and on effort. It is always on achievement and outcome. And National Education Policy 2020 is now insisting a lot on process-based learning and experiential learning. Outcome is irrelevant. And this is the reason why, they're carrying this credit system and the um, tyranny and the hegemony of this whole performance and competitive exams, and CET and NEET and CLAT and all your IITs and medicine and law universities and so on, that this is tyrannical. That and somewhere I think we need to get out of the shackles of this tyranny and experience the kind of freedom, to be. And this is not to say that we must not strive for perfection, we must not have initiative, we must not think of a career. That's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is that often we can put ourselves into straitjacket, and that's something that we have to guard ourselves against. And so, looking at the source of demotivation and addressing it from that perspective is actually what uh, then gets you to come out for. And I think when we provide assistance to people who experience motivational problems, motivation enhancement, I do that by actually enabling a person to have experiences of success, by affirming the person's other gifts, because a lot of these kids never hear anything uh, uh, which is which sounds like praise or affirmation or encouragement or pride. And even if it is a small thing, and this is not to fake the pride, but to say, I'm really proud of you. That so this whole business of this is the report card of your child, so many marks and all that, but here are some other observations. Your child is a great organizer. Your child is great with younger children. So these kind of personality traits and proclivities that we have, our helpfulness, our pro-social behaviors, our willingness to be part of the team, to collaborate and not be solo operators. These are some of the things that help us come out of the issue of motivation that you're talking about. Over to you, Dhanya. Let's take the last two points, and then perhaps you will do the closing of the session, because I have another session starting at 3.
Okay, certainly, certainly. We'll take two questions,
Sure, sure, sure.
Doctor. Yeah. So one question from Adit: how do we convince ourselves to make the right decision, even if we don't like it?
Um, I wonder, the right decision for oneself, or a right decision um, for uh, someone else. Sometimes I wonder what the term right decision actually means. Um, Perhaps I'm trying to quote from something that I had read ages ago. If I can find it, um, let's see. Well, no, I don't seem to be able to. You know, it's a question of, I think, reconciling the choices that we make. We are making those choices ultimately for whose benefit. This is not to say that if we make choices for us, there is something inherently wrong with that. Decision making as a life skill, the World Health Organization has classified life skills into 10 life skills. Of his decision making is one of the major life skills. And decision making, essentially plays itself out in several ways. And let me take you through that. Perhaps it'll help you to uh, really understand what I mean by the different aspects of. So if you look at, is it a negotiation I have to make? Is the decision that I have to make, is it about refusing something? Is it about cooperation? Is it a decision about expressing a certain feeling? Is it a decision about giving feedback? Is it a decision about how I want to manage this conflict? Is it a decision about whether I want to listen to this person or not? Is it a decision about my ability to contribute to this? Is it a decision of whether I can influence this or not? So decision making is actually about information gathering. It's about evaluating future consequences of the present action for the self and others. It's about determining alternative solutions to problems. It's about analysis regarding the influence of values and attitudes. It's about analyzing peer and media influence. It's about analyzing social norms and beliefs, and identifying relevant information and sources and so on. And often in this context, I put the question, what's the difference between a need, a desire, and a luxury? What's the difference between a need, a desire, and a luxury? Shoes. A need is I need a sports shoe. A desire is I want a branded sports shoe. A luxury is I want a branded sports shoe which has scintillating lights and is signed by Roger Federer or Rafael Nadal. So if you're clear about the context in which these decisions have to be made, it makes life easy. Over to you, Dhanya.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Seshadri. Our last question
Thank you.
from Dhara. I thought I must take up this question. She says, many of us are in 10th and 12th now, with the boards coming up, a lot of assignments to complete. And with this COVID situation that we are in now, there is a lot of pressure from all sides. So how do we cope up with this and also focus on the important things on our overall development, which includes studies and not just scoring marks?
Making lists is not a bad thing. Prioritizing is not a bad thing. Seeking consultation, checking out an idea with someone, finding out how other people are handling it is not a bad thing. Time management is not a bad thing. These are some of the ideas in which you really, what we refer to in the adult world as the work-home balance, and how this balance is really brought about. That. So these are very many techniques that we bring into, that is conversation, discussion, consultation, making our own list of priorities, putting them, into a kind of a daily routine. That, and with variety in it, so that it doesn't get boring. That, so you make it exciting, so that you look forward to anticipation of tomorrow, and an anticipation of the future is a very motivating, for the person who spoke about lack of motivation. I think a lack of motivation also has to do with the lack of anticipation about what do I have to look forward to, tomorrow, day after, for a year from now, 5 years from now. So let's build on this marvelous issue of anticipation. And so over to you, Dhanya, to basically close the session so that I can get into my 3 o'clock. And lovely to be with you, friends. And thank you very much for all the questions that you put. Please do. I see that some people have already checked out my band. And please do subscribe to the YouTube channel and pass it on to your friends and have a look at the kind of stuff that we do. Take care of your health, all of you. Be in good cheer, be safe. And may the force be with you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Seshadri. It was quite an interesting and inspiring talk. And I'm sure the audience has had an enriching experience, listening to you speak. There are a lot of takeaways, and I'm sure it's going to be beneficial for one and all. Thank you once again for your time.
Thank you so much, sir, for the wonderful and informative session. We shall now proceed to the valedictory function to commence this 3rd edition of our Youth Conclave.
Thank you very much, Anjana. All the best. All the best, guys. Take care, everybody. Jai Ho, DPS family. Jai, Jai, Jai.
One cannot fail without one's consent. One cannot succeed without one's participation. With this note, we would like to begin the valedictory function. A very good afternoon to one and all present here. We extend a very warm welcome to our esteemed Principal Manju Sharma ma'am, Vice Principal Anita ma'am, respected dignitaries, teachers, and participants. To incorporate the spirit of competition in the strong-willed Gen Z, DPS Bangalore South had organized an array of inter-school contests for which the participants had to send their entries over through mail. After extreme deliberation, we shall now be announcing the winners of the various contests held. Dance is the joy of movement and the heart of life. For the first event, Rhythm Nation Participants had to highlight the various privileges that they witnessed around them in society, and for the solo event and for the team event, they had to portray the unpredictability of life as seen in a kaleidoscope. The first position goes to Pujit from DPS Electronic City. The second position goes to Roshni from DPS South. Music is ubiquitous in this day and age, but its plethora of meaningful lyrics, diverse artists, and numerous genres have demonstrated its exceptional ability to not only influence the minds of the youth, but also to provide a unique platform for expression. The theme for the solo event was Dream a Dream on a Rainy Night, and for the group event, Color Symphonies. For the solo event, the first prize goes to Pranjali Sinha of Dean's Academy, ECC Road. The second prize goes to Sai Shri Anand from DPS East. For the group event, the first place goes to DPS Electronic City and the second place to DPS South. The fashion event, a la mode, was bifurcated into two, walking the ramp as well as designing. For the fashion designing event, the first place goes to Navya Mehra of DPS South, and the second place goes to Lavanya from DPS East. DPS South wins the first place for walking the ramp. The theatre event, Et tu Brute, the first place is taken by Abranil Ghosh of DPS East, and the second place by Hridaya Hirani from Dean's Academy, ECC Road.
Next up,
over to you, Anjana.
Next up, for the journalism event, the first place goes to Mrinalini Shankar from DPS Electronic City. Second place goes to Simran Himanshu Nayak from DPS North. A message from the judges: all the entries for journalism were very well written and it was really hard to give a first and a second place. Next up, we have the public speaking event, and the first place goes to Kushagra Ajmera from DPS East. Second place goes to Taruni Atreya, Dean's Academy, ECC Road. Next up, for the art event, the first place goes to Anvesha Nayak from DPS South. And second place goes to Sri Lakshmi Mohan from DPS East. Next up, for the photography event, the first place goes to Ashirvad Behra from DPS Electronic City. Second place goes to Aryan Prakash from DPS South. Thank you, everybody. We now have Akshat Fofalia, School Captain Boys, to propose the vote of thanks.
A very good afternoon to one and all present here. As this event comes to a close, I'm sure we all have something to take away from the 2 days of discussion and hands-on experience, from the various events and focus sessions to the keynote sessions and the panel discussion. We've been able to witness a variety of perspectives and ideas. I hope that this conclave has been successful in sparking a thought or an idea in everyone and allowed insight into our true selves. I would like to start off by thanking the keynote speakers, Mr. Rishabh Shah sir, Ms. Mala Mary Martina ma'am, and Dr. Shekhar Seshadri sir. Thank you all for giving us such insightful and entertaining knowledge. The focus sessions, arguably one of the most impressive parts about AHAM, served as a window for participants to get hands-on experience from experts in their respective fields. I would like to extend my warmest regards to all our focus session experts, Mr. Hemant Joy sir for music, Ms. Smita Shankar ma'am for art, Ms. Avni Panchekar ma'am for culinary arts, Mr. Kishore Amrit sir for photography, Mr. Arindam Sinha sir for filmmaking, Mr. Krishna Kashyap sir for theatrics, Ms. Shweta Saran ma'am for journalism, and Mr. Imran Ali Baig sir for basketball. These sessions would not have been as entertaining and informative without you all to guide us. The panel discussion allowed us to see how our peers from a few years back have created waves in their various fields and gave us a lot of information from a different and very relatable perspective. I'd like to thank A.K. Narasimhan, Janvi Kongwang, Grishma Mohan, and Sukrut Sudhakar for giving us a very interesting perspective on careers and finding our true calling. Naturally, this event wouldn't have been possible without the support of the school and the organizing team. I'd like to thank the management, Delhi Public Schools, Bangalore South, for giving us the opportunity to organize this event. I'd like to thank the Principal Manju Sharma ma'am, Vice Principal Anita Bijesh ma'am, and coordinators and senior mistresses of various blocks for supporting us and allowing this event to be a huge success. And of course, this event wouldn't have been such a big success if it wasn't for all of you who participated so enthusiastically. I'd like to thank all the participants in attendance, as well as the teachers from different schools for showing such interest and enthusiasm in making this event a massive success. A big thank you to all the student coordinators and teacher coordinators and the entire organizing team who ensured a seamless and fluid experience to everyone in attendance. This brings us to the end of this chapter of AHAM. We hope you had an amazing 2 days and look forward to hosting you all next year. Thank you very much.